Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today is Sunday, February 15th, 2026.
Hello again.
So if you've been anywhere near a screen, or frankly just another human being for the last few months, you know that the dust is finally settling on Season 2 of Squid Game, The Challenge.
Oh, it's unavoidable. It's been the dominant cultural conversation, hasn't it?
It really has. It dropped back in November of 2025, and, well, we have to talk about it.
We do.
But here's the thing. I don't want to do the standard recap. I don't want to just talk about who won, who lost, who backstabbed who in the dorms.
It's the way the tabloids are covering it.
Exactly. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to look at the massive, glaring, almost uncomfortable irony that's staring all of us in the face here.
You're talking about the origin story of this whole phenomenon.
I am. I mean, think about this for a second. Netflix took Squid Game, a fictional South Korean dystopian drama.
A masterpiece of social commentary.
Absolutely. A show that was explicitly, undeniably written as this horrifying allegory for the cruelty of modern capitalism. It was about people drowning in debt, literally fighting to the death for cash, while a bunch of rich people watched for kicks.
And what did Netflix do?
They turned it into a real-life game show.
Where real people, not actors, compete for the largest cash prize in television history.
$4.56 million. It's just...
Yeah.
They took a show about desperate people being exploited for the entertainment of the rich, and they made a show about desperate people being exploited for entertainment.
It is a fascinating cultural Ouroboros, isn't it? A snake eating its own tail.
It is.
And it really raises the core question. Is the irony lost on the producers, or is the irony the entire point?
That is exactly what we're going to figure out today. Our mission for this deep dive is to dig into the human cost of all this entertainment. We aren't just recapping episodes. We are investigating the physical reality of the filming, the psychological toll on the contestants, and the ethical storm that's been brewing behind the scenes ever since season 1.
And we have quite the stack of evidence to get through. A lot of material.
We're pulling from all over. We've got articles from The Independent, The Guardian, TV Guide, Manchester Evening News, and we have this very intense, detailed parliamentary report on reality TV mental health from a Dr. Arthur Cassidy.
That report it's heavy stuff.
It really is. Plus, and this is the gold dust, we have a first-hand account from a Season 2 player 383, a woman named Emily, who basically spilled all the details on what it was actually like inside that dormitory.
And that first-hand account is so crucial because it cuts through the Netflix editing, The show we see at home is a polished product. It's slick, it's fast, it's entertaining.
Right.
But the reality of making it, I think that's a very, very different story.
So let's unpack this, because I'll admit, I watch the show and I get sucked in. I see these people, I see the desperation in their eyes, and I'm rooting for them.
Of course.
But then I have this moment where I stop and I think, wait a minute. This is based on a show where people literally died.
And that is the core cognitive dissonance of the whole franchise, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is this just a game? Is it harmless fun? Or does this reality show mirror the very exploitation that the original drama was trying to criticize?
Yeah.
Because as we're going to see from the sources, while the fiction involved death, the reality involves alleged hypothermia, nerve damage, and a psychological condition Dr. Cassidy calls psychique.
Psychique. Wow. That word just, it sounds heavy. We are definitely going to deep dive into that later.
I had to.
But first, let's talk about the producers. I mean, they're not blind. They know what the original show is about. So how do they justify it? How do they justify turning an anti-capitalist satire into the ultimate capitalist game show?
Well, we have a fascinating interview from TV Guide with the executive producers, Tim Harcourt and John Hay. They address this head on.
Okay.
And their defense is, essentially, that we, the audience, the critics, are just reading way too much into the politics of it all.
Really? How can they say that? The creator of the original show, Hwang Dong-hyuk, literally said he wanted to write a fable about modern capitalist society. That's not subtext. It's the actual text.
It is. I know. But Harcourt and Hay, they argue that anti-capitalism was only a small part of the original series.
A small part.
That's their claim. And they use a very interesting and, I think, somewhat controversial analogy to make their point. They compared it to Star Wars.
Star Wars, as in lightsabers and Wookiees, Star Wars.
Yes. Let's break down their logic here because it is quite clever, even if you don't necessarily agree with it.
Okay, I'm listening.
They argue that Star Wars is, at its core, a story about anti-imperialism. It's about a scrappy rebellion fighting against a fascist, monolithic empire. It is deeply political.
Sure, when you put it like that, yeah.
But When you were a kid watching Star Wars, were you thinking about the socio-political ramifications of the Galactic Senate and trade federations?
No, I was thinking, wow, cool laser sword. I want to be a Jedi.
Exactly. Harcourt says, and I'm quoting here, people don't necessarily just focus on that as being about freedom or being about anti-imperialism. They focus on the swashbuckling adventure.
The hero's journey, the friendships.
Right. The good versus evil. They're saying the politics is just a backdrop, not the main event.
Okay, so I see what they're doing. They're saying, we aren't adapting the political manifesto of Squid Game. We're adapting the aesthetic. They're adapting the look of it.
Precisely. The visual language. The green tracksuits, the giant piggy bank full of cash, the childhood games with deadly stakes.
They're banking on the fact that for most viewers, the fun of Squid Game wasn't the critique of debt slavery.
Oh, no.
It was the insane tension of watching someone try to cut a cookie shape with a needle.
Exactly. They talk a lot about childhood competitive spirit and seeing character under pressure. They're framing it as a human drama, not a political one.
But I have to push back on that analogy, I really do. Star Wars is high fantasy. It's set in a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago.
Right.
Squid Game is set in modern Seoul. The people in the show are in debt. Real, crushing debt. They're dealing with loan sharks. It feels a lot more real and a lot closer to home than a stormtrooper.
And that is where the producers pivot to their second big defense. They draw a very sharp, very deliberate distinction between need and opportunity.
Need versus opportunity. Okay, break that down for me.
So, in the original Korean drama, the characters they're destitute. They're being hunted by creditors. If they don't play the game, they're effectively dead anyway.
Right, either by starvation or by violence.
It's life or death. They're playing out of absolute desperate need.
They're jumping off a cliff because the woods behind them are on fire.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
But the producers argue that in the challenge, the reality show, it's all about opportunity. These contestants are not, for the most part, being hunted by loan sharks.
They have jobs. They have lives to go back to.
Correct. They're coming to the show to win a prize that will enhance their life, not to literally save it from ruin.
So it's a lottery ticket, not a life raft. That's the claim they're making.
That's the claim. They're essentially saying, we remove the death and we remove the absolute destitution, so therefore the exploitation is gone.
But does that really hold up? I mean, $4.5 million is a life-changing amount of money for almost anyone on the planet.
That is exactly where the critics step in and just dismantle that argument.
Okay.
The Independent spoke to Ling Lam, who is a lecturer in counseling psychology, and she completely rejects this need versus opportunity distinction. She flat out calls it an ethical violation.
Wow. Strong words.
Very. She argues that in our current economy, with unaffordable housing, crushing student debt, the cost of living just going through the roof, the line between need and opportunity is incredibly blurry.
That is a really, really good point. If you're 35 and drowning in student loans and you know you'll probably never be able to afford a house, is $4.5 million just a nice to have, or does it feel like the only way you'll ever truly be free?
Exactly. Lamb's argument is that by dangling that specific amount of money, you are bypassing a person's rational safeguards.
How so?
You're using the money to lure people into giving away parts of their humanity. She argues that the sheer size of the prize forces people to endure things, physically and emotionally, that they otherwise would never agree to.
Like freezing temperatures and intense psychological torture, which we'll get to.
Correct. It essentially commodifies their dignity, puts a price tag on their suffering.
And this brings us back to that mirror effect concept you mentioned earlier, the idea from the social psychologist Sandra Wheatley. This idea kind of blew my mind a little bit.
It's a profound insight, isn't it? Wheatley suggests that the show acts as a mirror to our Western capitalist culture.
Right.
She argues that if we, the viewers, find the show uncomfortable or distasteful, it's because it looks too much like our everyday lives.
Okay, but how so? My everyday life doesn't involve a giant killer robot doll.
No, but does it involve sharp elbows in the workplace?
No.
Does it involve competition for limited resources? Does it involve, throwing people under the bus to get a promotion or to close a deal?
Oof. Okay, when you put it that way. Yeah.
It does. Wheatley's suggestion is that the people screaming the loudest about how immoral the show is are often the ones who are playing the game of capitalism most ruthlessly in their own lives. We don't like looking at it because it strips away the polite veneer of civilization.
So it's not creating the bad behavior, it's just revealing what's already there.
Exactly. It creates a controlled environment where the unspoken rules of our society, winner takes all, are made explicit and accelerated for our entertainment.
Speaking of environments, we need to talk about the physical reality of where this mirror is being held up, because watching it on Netflix, it looks like this high-tech, futuristic facility. It looks clean, it looks sterile.
It's a masterpiece of set design, an absolute triumph. But the reality, well, the Manchester Evening News reports that the dorms, those iconic bunk beds stacked to the ceiling, were filmed at War Studios in Barking, East London.
Barking. Not exactly the glamour of Hollywood, is it?
Not quite. But the big games,
Mhm.
the ones that need a massive amount of space, like red light, green light, they couldn't film those in a standard studio.
So where did they go?
They needed massive open floor space. So they went to Cardington Studios in Bedford.
Cardington. I think I've heard of that place.
You probably have. They're these enormous aircraft hangars. They were originally built back in the 1920s to house giant airships, Zeppelins.
Zeppelins. Okay, so just for a second. Picture a building big enough to park a blimp inside. That's the scale we're talking about.
Exactly. They are cavernous. They are concrete. And critically, they are old industrial spaces. They are not climate-controlled sound stages with cozy heating vents.
So you're in a giant, freezing cold airplane hangar in the middle of a British winter.
You've got it. And that brings us perfectly to the actual experience of living inside this game. Because that environment, the cold, the concrete, it plays a huge role in the psychology of the contestants.
Yeah, let's transition to that. Let's get past the shiny Netflix editing.
Yeah.
What was it actually like to be there? Because the editing, it's slick, it's fast-paced. But we found this transcript from a YouTube video by player 383 Emily from season 2.
Right.
And she paints a picture that is, well, it's not glamorous. It sounds more like a mild form of incarceration.
It really does. I read through her entire account, and the thing that just stood out to me was the total and complete immersion, the isolation.
The isolation. I think we really underestimate this when we watch these shows. Usually there's a bit of a break. You know, maybe you see the crew, maybe you get to step outside for a bit.
Right, you can decompress.
But she said it wasn't a set they visited and then went back to a hotel. They lived there, 247, in the dorms.
And just think about the sensory deprivation that comes with that. No phones, obviously. That's standard for reality TV. No internet. But she mentioned something else that was even more insidious.
No clocks.
No clocks.
That one detail freaks me out more than the no phones.
Me too. It's a classic disorientation technique. You see it in casinos to keep you gambling. You see it in prisons to maintain control. When you remove a person's ability to track time, you remove their ability to regulate their own anxiety.
You don't know if you've been sitting there waiting for a game for an hour or 4 hours. You don't know when the next meal is coming.
And no windows. She said they never saw the sun.
So your circadian rhythm is completely shot. You are just living in this timeless, artificial, fluorescent lit bubble.
And what about privacy?
Zero. Absolutely zero. You're sleeping in a room with hundreds of strangers. You're eating together, showering in shared bathrooms. And she mentioned that they even had to sleep with their microphones on.
That is just immense psychological pressure. You are never off. You are always performing, or at the very least, you are always under surveillance, even in your sleep, big brother. Or, I guess, the front man is listening.
Always listening. And let's talk about the luxury accommodations they were provided. She described this fanny pack survival kit they were all given.
Oh, this is good. What was in it?
A tin of Vaseline, a comb, and a toothbrush. That is it.
No soap, no moisturizer.
Nothing. No shampoo, no lip balm. She said her skin was struggling so much in the dry, recycled air that she was literally using the Vaseline as face cream.
Wow. See, that's more than just discomfort. That strips away your identity. Our little grooming rituals.
Yeah.
You know how we do our hair, our skincare routine? That's part of who we are. It's our armor for the world.
That's a good way to put it.
When you take that away, when everyone is greasy and unwashed and wearing the exact same green tracksuit with the same bad skin, you're homogenizing them.
Yeah.
You're turning them from people into numbers.
And the food. My God, the food. We see them eating in the show, but Emily described the porridge they got every single morning. She called it a sticky, gluey consistency.
Appetizing.
Just oats and water, no salt, no sugar, no flavor. The same bland meal every single day.
It creates a baseline of discomfort and craving. You're tired, you're disoriented, you're hungry for flavor, you're stripped of your basic comforts. It makes that giant piggy bank full of cash seem even more desirable because your current reality is so deliberately bleak.
It's like they're dismantling Maslow's hierarchy of needs from the bottom up.
But that's exactly what's happened.
But here's the thing that I think listeners will find really, truly shocking. I know I did. We're so used to shows like Survivor or Big Brother. Usually, if you make it onto a show like that, you get a stipend.
Right, a standard appearance fee, a little money for your time to cover your rent and bills while you're away from your job. It acknowledges that you are providing a service.
Yeah, providing entertainment.
Yes.
Well, Emily revealed that for Squid Game. The challenge, there's often no stipend at all.
Wait, zero?
Zero. She filmed for 21 days, 3 full weeks of her life, and she walked away with absolutely nothing.
That changes the dynamic entirely. That's not just playing a game anymore.
It really, really does. She mentioned that people are taking real time off work. They're using up all their vacation days or maybe taking unpaid leave. They are away from their families, their kids. So when you see someone on screen having a breakdown because they got eliminated.
It's not just, oh, I lost the game.
No, it's, I just wasted 3 weeks of my life. I've actually lost income by being here, and now I'm going home empty-handed to face the bills I couldn't pay while I was gone.
It creates the sunk cost fallacy on steroids.
Explain that for us. What does that mean?
The sunk cost fallacy is a psychological trap where you continue a behavior or an endeavor because of your previously invested resources, your time, your money, your effort.
Okay.
By day 15, you already suffered so much, the cold, the bad food, the isolation, the stress, that the idea of going home with nothing becomes psychologically unbearable. It feels like all that suffering was for nothing.
So you'll do anything to stay in.
Anything. You'll betray your best friend, you'll lie, you'll cheat. Because if you lose, it's not just a loss. It's a validation that your sacrifice was worthless.
That explains the raw intensity we see. The emotions aren't acting. It is genuine financial and psychological stress.
And speaking of stress,
we need to talk about the physical toll. Because season 2 was brutal, but the stories that came out of the filming of the first season, specifically regarding the red light, green light game, are just horrifying.
this is where the lawsuits come in. This is where it gets very serious.
Right. So when you watch it on TV, red light, green light looks like a 5-minute sprint, right? The doll sings, you run, she stops, you freeze. It looks simple.
But the logistics of filming that are a nightmare. You have 456 people. You have to verify every single movement with absolute fairness because $4.5 million is on the line.
You can't just play it real time.
No way. They need to check the cameras. They have adjudicators watching everyone. They have to review footage. It's a slow, painstaking process.
So according to the reports in both The Guardian and The Independent, how long did it actually take to film that 5-minute game?
6 to 7 hours.
6 to 7 hours. Just let that sink in.
Standing in a drafty, unheated aircraft hangar in Bedford in the middle of winter.
And remember the core mechanic of the game. You have to freeze. Player 215 from Season 1, a guy named Steven, described it. He said they would sprint for maybe 5 seconds, and then they had to hold that exact freeze position for 30 to 40 minutes at a time.
30 to 40 minutes.
While the adjudicators checked every single person for a twitch.
Can you imagine holding a running pose, maybe on one leg or mid-stride, off balance, for 40 minutes straight?
I can't hold a yoga pose for 40 seconds without shaking.
And now add the freezing cold. This is where the physiology gets really dangerous. When you hold a muscle in a contracted state without moving, that's called an isometric contraction, you are severely restricting blood flow to that muscle.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then you add the external cold. Your body's natural reaction to cold is vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels clamp down to preserve heat for your vital organs, so your muscles are essentially being starved of oxygen from the inside and the outside at the same time.
And what does that cause? What does that feel like?
Pain. Intense, burning pain. Lactic acid builds up immediately because the blood can't flush it out. Your muscles start to tremor uncontrollably, which is, a disaster in a game where you absolutely cannot move. And eventually you risk actual nerve damage.
And that is exactly what the reports claim. The Guardian reported that at least 2 unnamed contestants threatened legal action after Season 1.
And their claims were for hypothermia and nerve damage.
Yes. One solicitor who was representing them described a client whose hands turned purple from the cold.
Horrifying.
Another contestant said they saw someone faint from the cold and the stress, and the medics had to come in.
And here's the truly dystopian part of that story. People were shouting for medics, but some contestants didn't move even when they saw someone else collapse right next to them.
They were too scared of being eliminated.
The rules of the game overrode the basic human instinct to help someone in distress. It even overrode their own instinct of self-preservation. That just shows you the power of the structure they built.
And the solicitors representing these contestants are calling it a David and Goliath battle because you have these regular individuals going up against the full legal might of Netflix.
And Netflix, of course, denies any serious wrongdoing.
They do. They released a statement saying all appropriate measures were taken and that any claims of serious injury are untrue. They admitted it was cold, but they insist it was safe and no one was in real danger.
But the health and safety executive in the UK, the HSE, which is the government body for workplace safety, they did get involved, didn't they?
They did. They visited the set. They reminded the producers to plan properly for risk. Ultimately, they decided that no further action was necessary at that time, but the fact that the HSE even had to step in says a lot.
It does. It raises this massive ethical question. Is it acceptable to put unpaid contestants in literal fresh positions, in freezing temperatures for hours on end, all for the sake of entertainment?
Especially when they can't just walk away easily without forfeiting their only chance at that life-changing money. It comes right back to that opportunity versus need argument again.
If you feel you need that money, you will endure the freezing cold. You will endure the purple hands. You'll push your body past its breaking point.
And that physical cold is one thing. The body heals. You can warm up. But I think the psychological temperature, as you put it earlier, is where this gets truly dangerous.
This is where the long-term damage happens, the stuff you can't see on camera.
Yeah, this is the part of our research that really stuck with me. We need to bring in Dr. Arthur Cassidy's research now. He submitted this incredibly detailed evidence to the UK Parliament for their inquiry into reality TV and mental health.
Right.
And he uses a term that I had never heard before, but now I can't get it out of my head. The term is psyche.
It's a profound concept. And we should really pause on this because it's not just some buzzword he made up. It was originally coined by Edwin Schneidman, who is widely considered the father of modern suicidology, the scientific study of suicide.
Okay, so this comes from very serious, very established academic roots.
Absolutely. Schneidman's central argument was that suicide isn't necessarily caused by a clinical diagnosis like depression, but by psyche.
And how did he define that?
He defined it as an intense, intolerable emotional and psychological pain. It's a suffering of the mind. It doesn't come from a physical wound. It comes from deeply thwarted or distorted psychological needs.
What kind of needs are we talking about here? What gets thwarted?
The most fundamental ones. The need for love, the need for belonging and acceptance, the need for autonomy, that feeling that you are in control of your own life and your own destiny.
And if you look at the structure of reality TV, it seems almost perfectly designed to thwart those exact needs.
It's a machine for thwarting needs. Think about it. You have no autonomy. The producers control when you eat, when you sleep, when you speak, what you do.
Right.
You have a very precarious sense of belonging. Everyone around you is a potential enemy who will betray you for cash. And the love you might get, the fame, the public adoration, it's completely conditional and can be taken away in an instant.
Dr. Cassidy argues that contestants go into these shows with these massive and often completely unrealistic expectations. They think, this is it. This is my big break. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be rich. My real life starts now.
Exactly. And for 455 of the 456 contestants, that dream dies. And it doesn't just die quietly. It often dies in a very public, very humiliating way.
You might get a villain edit. You might look foolish or incompetent in a challenge.
Or maybe, in some ways, worst of all, you're just ignored. You're a background character. You go home and no agent calls. The phone is just silent.
And that crash, that collision between the expectation and the reality is what triggers the psyche.
Yes. When those inflated hopes slam into the hard wall of rejection, the pain can be unbearable. And Dr. Cassidy warns very explicitly that this can lead to suicidal ideation. He talks about the lethality of that specific kind of disappointment.
He also mentioned something in his report called assortative relating. It sounds like a very technical term, but the explanation was just terrifying.
It is a dark phenomenon of the social media age. Assortative relating basically just means that like attracts like. In this context, it refers to the formation of what he calls suicide clusters among former contestants.
Suicide clusters.
Yes. Vulnerable people can find each other much more easily now than they ever could before. If you have a group of reality TV rejects, people who have been chewed up and spit out by the industry, they find each other online. They form support groups.
Which sounds like a good thing.
It can be. But sometimes, instead of healing, they just feed into each other's despair. They validate the hopelessness. It becomes an echo chamber of trauma.
That is a terrifying thought.
It is. And if we apply this specifically to Squid Game, The challenge, the game mechanics themselves seem almost engineered to trigger exactly this kind of psychological pain. It's not just about losing a race. It's about guilt and betrayal.
I'm immediately thinking of Player 299 from Season 1, the Umbrella Man.
Spencer, yes.
Yeah.
That clip went absolutely viral. It was brutal to watch.
For anyone who didn't see it, this was the Dalgona cookie game. Yeah. He was the leader of his line of players. He had to pick a shape for his whole team to cut out.
And the other team leaders, they bullied him. They all refused to take the umbrella, which is obviously the hardest, most intricate shape to cut out. So he was basically forced into taking it for his team.
He took the bullet.
He did. And because he picked the umbrella, everyone in his line, about 40 other people, all had to attempt the umbrella. And almost all of them failed. They were eliminated because of the choice he was forced to make.
If you watch his face in that scene,
Yeah.
he is retching. He is hyperventilating. That is not acting. That is the crushing physical weight of knowing, I just ruined the hopes and dreams of 40 other people.
And he said it on camera. He said something like, I think some of them are going to remember me for the rest of their lives as the person who ruined their chances of becoming a millionaire.
That is such a heavy burden to carry forever. That is thwarted belonging in its purest form. He wanted to be a hero for his team, but the game turned him into their destroyer.
And the show encourages this. The structure demands it. Look at the Circle of Trust game in Season 1 and the similar themes they brought back in Season 2. The game is literally designed to make you betray your friends.
It incentivizes cutting social ties for personal gain.
It weaponizes friendship. It sends the message that the closer you are to someone, the more profitable it is to stab them in the back. That does something to your soul. It breaks the fundamental social contract that holds us together as human beings.
So given all this potential for serious, long-lasting damage, the psychique, the guilt, the trauma, what kind of support do they actually get? Dr. Cassidy argues that the aftercare needs to be massive.
He suggests rigorous, long-term psychological monitoring for 5 to 6 years post-show.
5 to 6 years.
That's his professional recommendation as a clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it makes sense. Trauma is not linear. It doesn't always hit you the week you get home.
Right.
It might happen 2 years later when you're broke again and you see a rerun of the show and you're hit with that tidal wave of, I almost had it. I was so close.
Or when the trolls on Twitter dig up your embarrassing clip and start making fun of you all over again.
Exactly. It's what he calls the moment the lust for fame meets the meltdown of rejection. It's a ticking time bomb for mental health.
So do we think Netflix is providing 5 to 6 years of ongoing therapy for 456 contestants?
The sources don't explicitly say, but industry standard is usually it's significantly less than that.
I was going to say.
Typically, you get a psych evaluation before the show. There's a welfare team on set during the show. And maybe you get offered a few sessions of aftercare immediately after you're eliminated or after the show airs.
A few sessions.
5 years of active monitoring would be completely unprecedented. And it would be extremely expensive.
And expensive. Which brings us right back to the cold, hard capitalism of it all. It is cheaper to burn through contestants than it is to fix them.
That is the grim calculus at the heart of it.
And yet, despite all of this, the cold, the psychological risks, the lawsuits, the ethical questions, Season 2 happened.
It did.
It dropped in November 2025. And by all accounts, they didn't dial it back. They didn't make it gentler. They leaned into the darkness.
They absolutely did. The Guardian Review described Season 2 as being meaner and darker than the first.
And the players seem to understand the game better this time around, right? In Season 1, there was still a sense of wonder. Oh, look, it's the set from the show.
Right, a bit of naivety.
In Season 2, they came for blood.
The metagaming evolved. The players had watched Season 1. They knew that being nice doesn't necessarily get you airtime, and it definitely doesn't get you the money. We saw this specifically with the British twins, Jacob and Raoul players 431 and 432.
Oh, the villains of the season.
The villains, or the stars, really, depending on your perspective. They were charming, they were funny, but they were absolute schemers. They openly plotted to eliminate other strong players. They didn't even pretend to be there to make friends.
But that has a cost too, right? Being the villain gets you that screen time, but it also makes you a massive target for public hatred online.
Exactly. You become a character in someone else's hate-watching session, and that follows you long after the show is over.
And the games themselves got nastier. There was a new game in Season 2 called Mingle.
Yes. The Guardian's review highlighted this one. Mingle sounds like a fun cocktail party, but it was just grim. It essentially weaponized social anxiety.
How did it work again?
You had to scramble to form groups of specific numbers announced over a loudspeaker. Form a group of 3. form a group of 5. And if you were left out, if you weren't in a group when the time was up, you were out.
Oh, that's brutal. It triggers that primal fear anyone who was ever picked last for the team in PE class knows. The fear of being the odd one out, the one nobody wants.
It forces people to literally push others away to save themselves. You'd see these scenes of, sorry, you can't come in our circle, we're full.
Just instant, brutal exclusion. Awful to watch.
And I can only imagine it was 1,000 times more awful to experience.
And Emily, player 383, she gave us some really interesting insight into the pentathlon game in season 2. On the show, it looks like a half-day event. You see this quick montage of running and jumping and puzzles.
But she revealed it took 2 full days to film.
2 full, grueling days of high-stress physical competition.
Again, it's that endurance factor that's hidden by the edit. We see the sprint to the finish line. We don't see the recovery. We don't see the nights in between where you're aching all over, trying to sleep on a thin mattress on a bunk bed.
She also touched on the editing. This is something we always suspect with reality TV, but hearing it confirmed is fascinating. She said some of the villains got bad edits, which we expect. They heighten the drama.
Of course.
But she also said some people got nicer edits than they actually deserved.
Now that is fascinating. It implies that the producers are actively crafting a specific narrative, not just documenting reality. Maybe there was a contestant who was actually quite nasty or selfish, but the producers needed a hero for that particular story arc.
So they just cut out all the mean comments.
It creates a completely distorted reality. Can you imagine being a contestant and watching the show back and seeing someone you know was an absolute jerk being portrayed as a saint?
It's gaslighting on a global scale.
It has to mess with your head. It makes you question your own experience.
So, at the end of it all, we have Mai Whelan, the winner of Season 1, who walked away with the $4.56 million. And now we have the Season 2 winner, who also got the prize. But for the other 455 people in each season...
They are the wreckage. They are the collateral damage. Mai is the exception that proves the rule. She is the lottery winner. For the vast, vast majority, they just return to what the Guardian so perfectly called the grotty game of real life.
And they might be returning with physical injuries, with psychological trauma, or just with that profound, crushing sense of loss.
And they return to a world that watched them fail on a global stage.
It really makes you question why we watch it. Why are we so drawn to this?
Because it's compelling television. We are wired as humans to watch struggle and triumph. But we have to ask ourselves, at what human cost?
So let's try to wrap all this up. We've unpacked a lot here. We've looked at the physical conditions, the freezing hangers, the allegations of nerve damage, the sheer endurance of it all.
We've looked at the financial reality, the zero-pay lottery ticket that preys on a very real and widespread desperation.
And we've looked at the deep psychological toll, the concept of psyche, the risk of assortative relating, and the kind of long-term monitoring that experts say is necessary but is almost certainly not provided.
And we've heard the producer's justification for it all, that it's not about need, it's about opportunity, that it's just about childhood competitive spirit.
Which, frankly, feels like a very convenient, very corporate way to ignore the dark mirror they are holding up to our society.
That's what it is. The show reflects our collective willingness to commodify desperation. We are turning financial survival into a spectator sport.
It's the Hunger Games, but with lawsuits instead of cannons at the end.
A very apt comparison.
I want to leave you, our listener, with one final thought. It's something that really shook me when I was reading Dr. Cassidy's parliamentary report. It's a heavy analogy, but I think it's a necessary one to truly understand the stakes here.
Go on.
He brought up the World Trade Center on 9/11, and he asked this incredibly difficult, provocative question about the people who jumped from the towers to escape the fire and smoke. He asked, can we define those deaths as suicide?
It completely challenges our conventional definition of choice.
Exactly. Did they choose to jump? In a literal sense, yes. But was it a free choice? Absolutely not. The alternative was fire. The choice was effectively removed by the horrific circumstance. And Dr. Cassidy asks us to look at choice differently when it comes to these shows. We say the players on Squid Game, the challenge, choose to sign the contract. They choose to participate. Nobody forced them at gunpoint.
But if the alternative back in the real world is financial drowning, if the alternative is a lifetime of debt, a lack of autonomy, a life where you feel you can never get ahead, is signing that contract truly a free choice?
Or is it a jump from a burning building?
Wow.
That's the question we have to ask. Are these people running towards the prize, or are they running away from their own reality? And as viewers, we have to ask ourselves, are we the VIPs from the original drama? Are we the rich, bored, mask wearers, sipping our drinks and watching people suffer for our amusement?
It is a question that might make the inevitable season 3 a little harder to watch.
I think it will. I don't think I can look at those green tracksuits the same way again.
Thank you for diving deep with us today. This has been a heavy one, but I think a really important one.
It has. Thanks for the conversation.
Until next time, keep questioning the narrative.